Soft jazz plays in the background. The chandeliers glow, and wealthy guests sip expensive wine. This isn't just any restaurant. It's one of the most exclusive places in Hollywood. A woman steps inside Sandra Bullock. She isn't in a flashy designer dress, no diamonds, no fur coat, no entourage. Just a simple yet elegant outfit. The waiter, tall and well-groomed, immediately sizes her up. His smirk grows. Something about her doesn't sit right with him. Maybe it's the simplicity, the lack of arrogance. In this place, people don't walk in unless they want to show off. Sandra just wants dinner. But this night is about to turn into something no one in this restaurant will ever forget. What happens next will leave you shocked. Have you ever been in a situation where someone judged you unfairly? If yes, hit the like button right now. And if you want to see more mind-blowing stories of Hollywood's most humble legends, make sure you subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The waiter's eyes flick to a couple sitting nearby. Two wealthy elites who clearly own half the city. He leans towards Sandra with exaggerated politeness. "Madam, this might not be the kind of place you're looking for." Sandra, confused, gives a small smile. "Excuse me. You see, our menu is quite expensive. Maybe I can recommend something more affordable for you." The rich couple chuckles. A man in a suit raises an eyebrow, watching with amusement. Sandra's smile fades. For the first time, she's been here before. Not in this restaurant, but in this moment. The moment where people assume they're better than you, where they decide your worth before they know your name. But she doesn't argue. She doesn't fight back. She just nods politely. And that's where the waiter makes his biggest mistake. "I mean, if you want, I can check if our kitchen has a children's menu." The whole restaurant erupts in soft laughter. Sandra doesn't react. She simply looks down for a moment. The waiter thinks he won. He thinks he just put a nobody in her place. But he doesn't notice the man sitting in the corner. Keanu Reeves. He is watching everything. His glass of wine remains untouched. His expression unreadable. Then, in a low, calm voice, he speaks. "That's enough." Silence. The entire restaurant freezes. The waiter turns pale. The customers stop laughing. Everyone knows that voice. Everyone knows that face. And now, everything is about to change. Sandra didn't fight back. But now Keanu Reeves is involved. Will he expose the waiter's mistake right away? Or does he have something far bigger planned? Find out in the next section. Keep watching, because what happens next will completely shock you. The waiter's smirk widens as he sees Sandra lower her gaze. He thinks he's won. He turns to the wealthy couple sitting nearby, the same ones who laughed earlier. "You see, madam, this is a place for people who appreciate fine dining, not for..." Before he can finish, a voice cuts through the air, deep, calm, unshakable. "That's enough." A fork clinks against a plate. A waitress freezes mid-step. Everyone turns toward the voice. Keanu Reeves slowly places his wine glass down. The light catches his face. Even those who didn't recognize him before know him now. The waiter's confidence shatters in an instant. Keanu doesn't yell. He doesn't curse. His voice remains calm, but there's a weight in it, a kind of authority that doesn't need to be proven. It's just there. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Keanu asks, tilting his head slightly. The waiter freezes. He glances at Sandra, then back at Keanu. No." Keanu interrupts. His tone isn't angry. It's disappointed. He slowly stands up, adjusting his jacket. And that's exactly the problem. The rich guests who were mocking Sandra just moments ago suddenly shift uncomfortably. A hush falls over the entire restaurant because now Keanu Reeves is involved and nobody wants to be on the wrong side of him. The waiter swallows hard. He suddenly realizes he might have just ruined his career. But the nightmare isn't over. It's just beginning. Keanu hasn't exposed Sandra's identity yet. He hasn't yelled or demanded an apology. So what's his plan? Is he about to humiliate the waiter in front of everyone? Or does he have something even bigger planned? Keep watching because what happens next will completely shock you. Sandra sits quietly, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the table. She could have spoken up. She could have put the waiter in his place right there and then, but she didn't. because this wasn't the first time. As the restaurant remains in absolute silence, we fade into a distant memory. The setting changes. We're no longer in a fancy restaurant. Instead, we see a young girl, no more than 10 years old, sitting alone on a school bench. The school bell rings. Other kids laugh and play, running past her, but she stays still, looking down at her worn-out shoes. A group of girls approaches her, whispering to each other. "Why do you talk like that?" one of them asks. "You sound so weird." The young girl lowers her head. She wants to explain. She wants to tell them that she moves a lot because her dad is in the military, that she never gets to stay in one place long enough to make real friends. But before she can say anything, the girls laugh and walk away. She stays quiet because she learned something that day. When people see you as different, they don't listen, they just judge. And sometimes silence hurts less than fighting back. The restaurant fades back into view. Sandra blinks, snapping out of the memory. She looks at Keanu. He isn't just standing up for her. He's standing up for every version of her that was ever ignored, mocked, or underestimated. For the first time that night, her silence isn't a defense mechanism anymore. It's anticipation, because she knows Keanu isn't done yet. Keanu isn't just here to defend Sandra. He's about to teach the waiter a lesson he'll never forget. But how will he expose Sandra's true identity right now? Or does he have a more powerful plan in mind? Keep watching, because what Keanu does next will change everything. The restaurant remains dead silent. The waiter, now sweating, shifts uncomfortably. He still doesn't know who Sandra really is, but he knows he messed up. Keanu doesn't break eye contact. He slowly walks toward the waiter, his presence alone sending a chill through the air. Then, in the calmest voice, he asks, "What's the most expensive dish on your menu?" The waiter blinks in surprise. That would be the platinum steak, sir." Keanu nods. "How much?" $5,000, sir." The rich guests smirk, thinking Keanu is about to flex his wealth. But Sandra, she knows Keanu, and she knows this isn't about money. Keanu reaches into his jacket and pulls out a sleek black credit card. He taps it on the table. "I'll take 2. The waiter freezes. "Yes, sir." Keanu repeats, his voice dangerously steady. "1 for me, and 1 for her." And that's when the entire restaurant realizes Keanu isn't just buying a meal. He's making a statement. The waiter's hand shakes slightly as he scribbles the order. He rushes to the kitchen. But when he returns, Keanu is already pulling out a chair. Not for himself, for the waiter. "Sit," Keanu says. The waiter stares at him in shock. "Yes, sir. You serve expensive food every day, don't you? You must know what it tastes like." The waiter swallows. The rich guests lean in, eager to see what happens next. But Sandra, she watches without saying a word, because she knows this is more than just a meal. Keanu is about to teach a lesson no one in this room will ever forget. Why did Keanu order the most expensive meal? And why is he making the waiter sit? Is this a lesson in humility? Or is he about to do something even bigger? Keep watching, because what happens next will shock everyone. The waiter stands frozen, his face pale. Why is Keanu Reeves asking him to sit? The other guests whisper among themselves. The restaurant manager stands in the distance, watching anxiously. The waiter forces a nervous chuckle. "Yes, sir, I can't sit at the customer's table." Keanu tilts his head slightly. "Why not?" The waiter shifts his weight, clearing his throat. It's just not meant for someone like me, sir." Keanu's lips curl into a knowing smirk. "Exactly." The waiter freezes because now he finally understands. His own words thrown back at him. He had told Sandra Bullock, one of the biggest stars in the world, that this place wasn't meant for her. And now, he is the one who suddenly doesn't belong. The room feels smaller. The heat from the chandeliers presses down on him. For the first time, he tastes his own arrogance, and it doesn't sit well. The kitchen doors swing open. 2 plates of perfectly grilled platinum steak are carefully placed on the table, golden cutlery, silver platters. The rich guests lean forward, eager to see what happens next. Keanu gently pushes one plate towards Sandra. The other he slides in front of the waiter. The waiter's hands shake. "Yes, sir, I can't." "Why?" Keanu asks again, his tone still calm. The waiter gulps. "Because it's too expensive. I don't deserve this." Keanu leans in slightly. "And yet, you decided she didn't deserve it either." The waiter's throat closes up. A deep silence blankets the restaurant. Sandra Bullock watches quietly because this is the kind of lesson that doesn't need shouting, doesn't need insults. It just needs a mirror. And right now, the waiter is staring straight into it. The entire restaurant is watching. The waiter is cornered by his own words. Will he learn from his mistake? Or will his pride make him lose everything? Keep watching because what happens next will be unforgettable. The waiter stares at the $5,000 meal in front of him. His throat feels dry. He can feel hundreds of eyes on him. Rich guests, the restaurant manager, the entire staff. His face burns with shame. He finally understands what Keanu is doing, and it's too late to undo his mistake. Sandra Bullock, the woman he mocked and humiliated, has been silent this entire time. But now she finally speaks. Sandra gently places her fork down. She looks directly at the waiter. "You didn't think I belonged here." Her voice is calm. No anger, no arrogance, just understanding. The waiter lowers his head. Sandra leans forward slightly. "But let me ask you something. Would you have treated me differently if you had known who I was?" The waiter freezes because that's the real question. A few guests whisper among themselves. One of them, an older man, widens his eyes in realization. He pulls out his phone, and his jaw drops. Wait a minute. Is that Sandra Bullock?" Another guest gasps. Suddenly, whispers turn into murmurs. "No way, the Oscar-winning actress. She was in Gravity and Speed. Oh my God, that's her." Phones come out. People start searching. And just like that, the woman they mocked is now the woman they want a selfie with. The waiter's entire body tenses. His head snaps up, eyes wide. He looks at Sandra, and suddenly everything shifts. She's no longer just a random woman in simple clothes. She's a Hollywood icon, a legend. And he treated her like dirt. His breathing grows shallow. The rich guests who laughed along with him earlier now look at him like he's the biggest fool in the room. His biggest mistake wasn't just humiliating a customer. It was humiliating the wrong person. Sandra gives a small knowing smile. "But that's the thing, isn't it?" she says softly. "It shouldn't matter who I am." The room falls completely silent. Sandra pushes back her chair and stands. It's not about who someone is. It's about how you treat people when you think they're nobody. And with that, she turns and walks toward the exit. Keanu watches as Sandra gracefully leaves the table. Then, he looks at the waiter. The poor man is visibly shaking. Keanu gives him one last look of disappointment. "You should be thankful for this lesson. Not everyone gets a second chance." Then he turns and follows Sandra out, leaving behind a room full of silent, regretful people. The waiter slowly sinks into the chair. His hands grip his apron tightly. Today, he didn't just lose a tip. He lost his dignity. But the real question is, will this change him forever? Keep watching, because what happens next will bring the most powerful ending yet. The door swings shut behind Keanu and Sandra. Inside, the waiter remains frozen. His heart pounds. The realization of what just happened sinks in. The rich guests who laughed with him earlier now refuse to make eye contact. The restaurant manager shakes his head in disappointment. And the waiter? He feels small. Outside, a light drizzle begins to fall. Sandra and Keanu walk side by side, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. Sandra lets out a small breath of amusement. "You didn't have to do that." Keanu chuckles. "Yeah, but you would do it for yourself." She looks at him, a beat of silence. "You always do this, don't you?" Keanu smirks. "Do what?" "Stand up for the underdog." Keanu tilts his head slightly. "Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" Sandra looks back at the restaurant. "You know, it's funny," she says softly. "People only care about who you are when they realize what you can do for them." She turns back to Keanu. "But the ones who really matter, they treat you with respect from the start." Keanu nods. "And those are the people worth keeping." A silent understanding passes between them. Then, with a final glance at the glowing city, they walk into the night. Because tonight, they didn't just teach a lesson. They reminded the world of something far more important. If you were in that restaurant, would you have laughed with the others? Or would you have stood up for what's right? Let us know in the comments. And remember, respect isn't about status. It's about character. Stay tuned for more incredible stories. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Blast off!